Good afternoon, hello and welcome to our panel. This is Going the Distance, Strengthening Your e-commerce teams remotely and planning for the future. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. We're really excited to answer some questions that you've already given to us, some more that we think would be really helpful in terms of hiring, if it's possible to hire at the moment, onboarding and managing remotely, because obviously this is a very difficult time and it's really important that we put our people first, and we've got some fantastic leaders in their field to tell you about how they're coping with looking after their teams and building and strengthening their teams from home. Hello, if you'd like to introduce yourself. Merve.
Hello everyone. Thanks, Kate. It's really nice to be here today. I'm quite enjoying these sessions where we're sharing insights with each other and trying to help us out, sharing best practices. So really looking forward to the session. I'm head of marketing at Insider, looking across 24 countries at the moment. Also, I'm really happy to be here in the session today.
Thank you. Elliot?
Hi everyone, my name's Elliot Dell. I'm CEO of Salt Recruitment Group. We are a global digital recruitment firm with circa 250 staff across the world, 9 different countries, 11 offices, and everything we do focuses around digital transformation, be it creative, marketing, sales or technology. And likewise, very happy to be here and be part of this world video community that we're all now part of.
Fantastic. Lena?
Hi, I'm Lena. I'm head of e-commerce of Dixon, a home interiors design studio and manufacturer. And yeah, I'm looking after remotely a team of 6 at the moment and the global e-commerce business of Dixon.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you all three of you for being here today. And thank you to everyone that's joined. We have, some of you have already provided some great questions that I'm going to pose to the panel. But if anyone has any further questions that they'd like to pitch that we'll address at the end of the session, if you follow the link there, and I'll just pop it on the chat for you so you can follow the link so you don't have to type it. Here we go. Fantastic. So if you have any questions, pop them on the Slido and we're going to go through them at the end, but I'm going to get started with our fantastic panelists and start quizzing them now. So first question, and I'll pitch this to you, Elliot, if you'd like to start. If companies are in a position to hire, how should they alter their hiring processes to make sure that they secure the right people?
So first and foremost, I think it's a great opportunity for us all to make sure that we've got the right technology to go through a hiring process. It's always been a struggle for candidates to get out of work, make time for interviews, particularly if they're interviewing at 3, 4, 5 different companies, and especially if they're getting invited back for first round, second round, third round. So making sure that as a business, you've got the right technology for communicating, building remote communities and collaborating. More so now than ever. You can't go into a building, you can't go and meet people face to face. So it's really important that we are engaging with each other with good technology. You know, we are not having problems with the technology, with the sound or with the pictures, etc. when we're setting these interviews up, and that we're continuing to create a smooth process. We should also do as much as we can to give candidates a kind of feel for the culture and the office environment. So any videos that we can share from, you know, team nights out, company parties, quarterly launches, AGMs, some fun videos of, you know, quiz nights or sports days or whatever we do as businesses to create the culture within. So, you know, we have to do more. We have to go that extra mile right now. We can't just rely upon someone walking into your shiny new offices and, you know, being sold by the dream because it's a nice commute and it's a nice building. More so than ever right now, employers need to focus on selling their culture, selling their community, selling the future of the role and why they should work for that particular business.
Fantastic. Do you think there's a difference in the speed of how one should hire? Do you think that's changed with remote working?
Well, look, we've all got a bit more time on our hands right now. You know, I'm personally saving 3 hours a day from a commute. I think it's important that we allow candidates the right amount of time to digest the experiences that they're having, that we're not rushing them through processes. I think it's a great time to ensure we are getting the right people by giving them that time and that breathing space, and they're not being pressured into making decisions. I think it's very important that, you know, we set timelines out, whether that's hiring, you know, through this strange time that we're in now, or just generally within recruitment processes. I think it's really frustrating for candidates and for recruiters alike when we're putting candidates into processes and there isn't a defined timeline. I think it's always important that an SLA is set out in terms of, is this going to be a two-stage process, a three-stage process? Is it going to take 2 weeks? Is it going to take 4 weeks? And that we have some sort of calendar availability from all the key stakeholders along the way. So I think timelines are really important, but I don't necessarily think that means that, you know, you need to speed up the process necessarily.
Thank you. Lena or Merve, do you think remote working will alter the kind of people that you would look to hire?
Lena, you can start.
I think, yeah, the first impression definitely is probably a bit different. I think it will very much depend on how you also make that stage. I think there's an element of nonverbal communication and an element of also hosting somebody, like inviting somebody in, that is completely missing. So I think it's making sure you make that person feel at ease when you start. Also, just a video call is a bit colder, and then you will immediately see how this person also reacts to this kind of abnormal situation. So you have already kind of an element that you normally don't really get, because an interview, if you're kind of hiring for a more senior role, people have gone through many interviews, but now they're in a different position. So you will get an element of competence that you can prove on, you can check on, and I guess that will subtly or on purpose influence your decision.
Thank you. Merve, anything to add?
Well, I think a lot of things are changing right now. Even like the segments are changing. Some of the generations, like our mothers, our grandmothers, are even using apps or things like that. So everything is changing, and change is going to stay with us. So especially for e-commerce companies now trying to deal with all the supply chain issues and you know, laying off in some parts and hiring in other parts, I think it's definitely going to change the way we hire. And the kind of skills that we look for. And there is a great talent out there right now that is looking for opportunities. And most experts are saying, you know, we should probably look for, you know, you should forget your career dreams right now. You should pause them, and you should really focus on, you know, getting job stability. So people are actually looking for jobs in a different mindset. So as hiring managers, we have to be also worry about that, because if someone is just coming in to, you know, find a great candidate, finding a short-term position, and then after the epidemic, they're going to maybe leave the company to look for better positions, I think we should be a little conscious about that. Not that it may affect our decision, but being conscious of that really actually helps you manage your time with the, you know, investment that you make in your new hires. So there are a lot of things that are changing, and I think we should be aware of those when we're making the hires. And one little addition to the speed, I think people are kind of competing for the good talent out there, or lining up candidates for after the COVID era. I think it might be, like Elliot said, the SLAs are really important. And it might be better to, you know, make quicker decisions. Like if someone is not maybe culture fit or job fit, we can go back and say that in the 24-hour frame. So I think that's one thing that people that I've been speaking to are doing. They're shortening their, you know, hiring intervals and putting in these quick turnarounds to make sure people are focusing on the right candidates.
That's really interesting. Thank you. On the subject of the right candidates, how important is it to create an employee value proposition, and what do you think that should be at this time?
Elliot, do you have something to say, or I can jump in?
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, you know, your EVP is the shop window of your company. You know, there's been more emphasis on that than ever over the last 4 or 5 years, and companies investing in agencies to create videos and, you know, campaigns in terms of, you know, attracting the right people. You know, all of that hard work that companies have done is certainly coming to fruition now. The companies that did invest in, good investment in terms of videos, in terms of marketing your brand in the right way, in terms of being able to get your culture across as a story from videos and from interviews with your employees, etc. I think that's very much going to put companies at an advantage right now. Those that didn't invest in EVP, those that haven't harnessed their brand and put themselves in a strong shop window, they're going to struggle to hire right now, because like I say, companies that have perhaps invested on relied upon being in a good location or having a flashy office or something like that, those things right now are redundant. People need to see your company coming to life right now. And those companies that when you click on their websites, they've got lots of video content, they've got interviews with their employees, they've got, their customer experience feedback, they've got their Net Promoter Score on there or their Google reviews. All these things that can bring a brand to life through words and pictures are really going to come to the forefront right now.
Fantastic. When we've talked before, we discussed that people might be tempted in this time to, rather than hire someone that suits their culture, might decide to go for someone that that ticks the boxes from a sort of far more pragmatic, project-based approach. Do you think that's a fair decision to take, or do you think it might be damaging long term?
So I definitely saw this in the last financial downturn back in sort of 2008, 2009, where I think businesses started to hire slightly different types of people, people that were more execution based, people that were more self-starters, people that could build something from scratch, people that could work alone more. We've been through a luxurious time over the last few years where, we've been working through strong economies on a global basis. We've been able to hire over and above perhaps the people that we need in terms of headcount. And that means people have done roles, but they perhaps haven't done the full role. So people in business development roles, as an example, may have actually been doing more farming and account management. In times like this, actually, you need new leads, you need new customers, you need new points of contact. So I think companies will have to adapt and change, and it will give them a different outlook on some of the values that they look for from a cultural perspective. A business, like I say, that has relied upon having, 5 or 10 customers that have kept them alive for the last decade. Actually, now they need a new type of person that can go out there and find new businesses. So I think there is going to be a shift from massive emphasis on culture and people looking for people that can actually get a job done and get some project deliverables in place.
Thank you. Anyone else, anything to add on that point?
I can add to this point. I mean, I totally agree with the trends and the realities of the economy at the moment, but it will actually depend probably on the culture of the company as well, how important and how central culture is. I mean, coming from a kind of a startup background, I mean, culture is everything to us. We protect it. We have so many shareholders in the company that their first role is to, protect the culture. So probably in our hiring, I don't want to say no matter what happens, because we didn't see the full tunnel yet. But facing this right now, I think culture is not something we would sacrifice. We would not settle on a person that, does not fit with our culture. But having said that, if I was managing supply chain in Amazon at the moment, and if I needed to make that 100K hires, I don't know if I would be saying the same thing. So it will probably depend on how front and center your culture is in your value proposition or in your hiring practices, and how you have trained your hiring managers to hire in the past. Yeah, it can be a good debate topic, actually.
It definitely is, and there's definitely valid reasons on both sides. What we are definitely seeing at the moment is interim and freelance positions are very attractive for businesses. One, it gives them a window of opportunity to see if they are making the right hire, but it also gives them flexibility with regards to their fixed costs. Right now, obviously, businesses in the UK are making many employees furlough, putting them on furlough. So, it could be very disrupting if you're suddenly hiring 3, 4, 5 new people when arguably you could have used someone that you put on furlough within that same position. So I think an interim solution right now is very attractive for customers, but also as well, we're working in this new world, right, where we're sitting at home and we're doing, we're not affecting a desk of people around us, and sometimes we may not have hired someone because they might be really loud, they might be really brash compared to the culture of the rest of the team, because it's quite a placid team, and we may think that could be quite disruptive. Whereas right now, actually, that energetic, you know, extroverted person working at home may be able to do an amazing job for your company. So there's definitely going to be compromises, and there's definitely going to be reevaluations on the types of people that we hire.
Brilliant, thank you. On to onboarding. So if you have managed, oh no, I've got another question on hiring actually, because not everyone is in a position to hire. We know that, as you've mentioned, people are being furloughed or laid off entirely. But so if hiring isn't an option at the moment, what can leaders be doing now to improve their talent acquisition pipeline?
So, you know, as a leader myself, what am I doing right now? I'm continuing to speak to people as if we were hiring. It's as simple as that. And I'm also continuing to speak to people with the fact that we may need a different outlook in 2 months' time, 3 months' time, 6 months' time. None of us know how long this is going to go on for. You know, we may have to adjust our teams internally, reshape what we're doing. And I'm seeing the same with customers as well. You know, they are reevaluating their projects and the types of hires that they need to make. So, you know, I would recommend that leaders just keep speaking to people, keep pipelining, keep telling the story, use it as a window of opportunity. Rather than spending 15 or 20 minutes on the phone with someone, you can actually spend 30 or 40 minutes on the phone with someone and really get to know them, really invest some time with them, really get to suss out who they are, what they're about, the sorts of skills that they could bring to your table. So yeah, I wouldn't slow down from a networking point of view. I wouldn't slow down. In fact, if anything, I would speed up in terms of networking and building a pipeline for the future.
Would you agree, Merve?
Definitely. Actually, it's the time right now to make strategic tests and put our, you know, best skills forward, because we have to test a lot of things right now. It's a great period. And talking to our Asian marketers, you know, Asia is kind of getting out of the crisis right now, and talking to senior marketing leaders over there, they tell us that things get back to normal pretty fast. And when that happens, if you have not built your pipeline, if you have not built those relationships right now in this period, then you're not going to be agile enough to put your team together and to go after the growth that you're looking for, especially when the competition is going to be really, really fierce. And I mean, breaking the news, you know, Q4 is coming, and this is the time where, you know, most e-commerce, Lena can talk about this, most e-commerce leaders are actually making most of their revenue. And if they don't have the right teams after the pandemic, and with all the changes they're facing, with all the competition, it's going to be pretty tough. So building those relationships right now, speeding up your, you know, building relationships and speeding up your hiring process, but of course being really transparent and open to the candidates about what you're able to do right now, but make those people like one WhatsApp message away, so that once you have the resources, once the time hits, you can make the right decisions really fast. Because right now it's funny, right? All the marketing managers are under pressure. Cut spend. And then in 2 months, it's going to be like revenue. And people are going to be putting more and more pressure. So that's why I think we should use this as a strategic testing period, and really get ready for the post-pandemic period.
Brilliant, thank you. Is it possible to properly onboard workers remotely without that face-to-face contact? Or is that something you have much experience with at Insider?
Onboarding is, you know, we, talking about the marketing team, we're across 29 countries. We have marketers spread across maybe 16, 17 different regions. We have been remote before. But of course, for onboarding, we would fly those people to, you know, either Singapore or some other country or region to have an onboarding, like a real onboarding experience, because that's when, you know, little avatars become real people, and you can have that human connection that goes a long way in building relationships. So yes, at Insider we have a pretty crazy onboarding, and now it's online onboarding, from welcome packs that are personalized, just like our business. You know, everything is personalized. There are stickers, manifestos, messages from our CEO, you know, growth stories and things like that. So the welcome pack really is an offline touch at the moment, maybe the only offline touch you may have with these people. So it's really important to make it unforgettable. I think this is our motto for our onboarding: make it magical, make it unforgettable. Even if if it's online or offline, you're dealing with people, and people have emotions no matter what we are going through. So it's important to touch the hearts of the new people, whether they're an intern or they're a senior manager, it doesn't matter. It really needs to be magical. So for that, we really have a lot of first day presentations, lots of trainings. We have an L&D center that provides the various learning opportunities, for example, doing AMAs with VCs for people who want to have their businesses later on, or having like an industry expert coming and talking about the current situation, or we can do like an AMA with our own CEO, etc. So the onboarding process is very kind of how to say, maneuvered very well, and it's a very long process. So especially now, we should increase that time, or even if it's virtual, with the new people, and to create the right kind of tech stack to support them on an ongoing basis. Maybe have a buddy program, maybe have like a 24 open space where they can submit their questions or their feedback. So we should be responsive to people who are onboarding right now, as they're not going to be able to pull our hair in the office. So that's what we're doing right now, trying to be visible and responsive, and having those, you know, shareholders and buddies there for them for whatever they may need.
That's a good point. Lena, how are you managing being available for your team, whether that's for onboarding with all the infuriating questions that every new person feels embarrassed to ask, but definitely needs to in order to get themselves up to speed? How are you managing that?
Yeah, I think with an increased emphasis on the topic, I've always had an open door policy, even being in a open space office, and I just continue doing that, and I have more time. I mean, as Elliot mentioned, like, we all have a bit more time to spare, kind of, because there's no commute, and I just make sure that I'm available. And I guess to add to Merve's introduction, it's also like making sure you have enough time for the onboarding, because it's something that is quite time consuming anyway, even offline. But there's an element of like, you cannot just show somebody how to do it. It's not as easy. They don't sit next to you. They don't feel that culture right now. They don't listen to how you talk to other people who you quickly, I don't know, go and have a coffee with normally because it's your important stakeholder in the business. So all these things you need to tie in and explain. But just on a day-to-day management of the team, I'd say definitely make sure they are not afraid of coming to me at any point of time, and having also some kind of structure to it. So we do dailies, like kind of daily morning catch-ups, where everybody is a mix of kind of formal and informal. So if there's anything important that we need to be aware of, and I'm working with like cross-disciplinary team across digital communication and e-commerce, if there's anything that they really need to be spot on at a certain time, that's the moment of the day to remember everybody. But then it's also informal. It's like just to kind of connect and making sure you get a bit of a feeling for your people, how they're feeling, how they're coping with the situation. There's people that are living by themselves. They might just have a bad day. They might, after a lot of sunny days in London, see rain again and be very grumpy. You never know. And all of these kind of, to give a bit of that social element that you normally have quite naturally in the office, you don't have right now. So making sure this element, why we're working in a team, why this team feels actually like a team, doesn't get forgotten in all this kind of this like screen time increased so much. So keeping the human element in there.
Totally. Thank you. Do you think, Elliot or Merve, do you agree that there has to be, or companies have a responsibility to host the social element as well as the work? I think it's easy to get, to get frustrated with all the Zoom calls, like this one that, could have been an email. But do you think the social, the completely non-work associated online events, do you think employees have a responsibility to provide those? Elliot?
It's 100% an employer has a responsibility for their employees' mental health. It's as simple as that. I believe that 100%. It's one of the key responsibilities that you have. You onboard a human being first and foremost. Their mental health and work well-being, their self-care, their self-love is the most important thing. If you get top performance out of people by them being the best versions of themselves. So you need to cover every step of their wellness. So when you relate to an onboarding process as an example, there's an academic side to that with regards to manuals and systems and processes and user training and all the rest of it. But then there's that cultural aspect as well, the buddy program, which has obviously been mentioned. And then that needs to be maintained. You can't just do it at the beginning. You have to maintain that throughout someone's career. So I'm a massive advocate of the fact that, you know, all of the quizzes that are going on, you know, we're hosting fit sessions with HIT sessions with one of our guys who used to be a personal trainer on a Friday. Obviously, companies are doing online yoga sessions as well, you know, meditation sessions, mindfulness sessions, Q&As. These are all part of people development and the people life cycle. And we need to be even more meticulous on that right now because we're doing that from afar. So absolutely has to be incorporated into the business as usual, you know, the morning scrums, the team meetings, the one-to-ones, etc. All of the other parts of an employee life cycle have to be integrated into that. So absolutely 100%, every aspect of a human's wellness is an employer's responsibility.
Yeah, I just to add to that, maybe obviously, and I think we're aligned on this, is like, as long as it's voluntary, because people have different needs in this time as well. Like in my team, I have people with children, and obviously it's quite a challenging time if you're combining home office and homeschooling at the moment, which might change very soon again, but we don't know. So some people have more time to spare, as I mentioned. Some might be living by themselves, or just roommates, and can join these beer sessions, quizzes, etc. And other people might rather just take like leave the office when they would leave it anyway and just take care of their kids. So I think as long as it's voluntary and it's not feeling like people are not feeling forced to join, also on top of the normal meetings, the social meetings, definitely fine. I'm also advocate of that kind of element of the human and like work-life balance.
Opt-in social time. I really like that. On the subject of, you know, when people clock off, you know, when people are available, how have all three of you, have you had any concerns when it comes to monitoring productivity and just kind of making sure that, you know, knowing what people are doing and building that trust to monitor?
So
I can jump. Oh, so go ahead.
Sorry, go on, Merve, you go.
Okay. Well, the thing is, again, it's your view on productivity and how you build a culture of accountability between people. If it's, you know, again, depends on the culture. You know, if you have a very flat organization and you don't have this head and subordinate relationship, you know, I think it's really important to create that culture of productivity. And it's not like given by the head to the people. So we run, for example, weekly sprints. What do? You make people a part of the problem. So let's say you have a business that's, you know, people have more time in their hands, and then you have another business like ours right now, who people are maybe working 2 or 3 times more than the usual times, right? So if you're in that kind of a situation, and if you're having frustration because of that, or if you're having some productivity issues, you make people a part of the problem, and you make them commit to the workload in running sprints or doing retro meetings and openly and transparently talking about it and over communicating that this is not a normal time where we are all just vacationing at home. Right? This is a time where we can build, as leaders, we have to create a story out of it, the story that we also believe. Because personally, I believe that we're going to get stronger out of this period as leaders, because we're building a lot of new muscles. And for productivity, I think people are building new muscles. But if it comes to a point where people are frustrated, it's important to involve them in the process and make them accountable to their peers, not to you. So this way, you know, you can, of course, look at the, you know, set the realistic targets together. You can look at the sprint success and look at it together, not like, oh, why didn't you do that task? Your productivity is falling, and start micromanaging people, because that's going to that's going to definitely destroy the trust element. So I strongly believe in that, you know, 2 things: creating the accountability culture between peers, and being super transparent and realistic about the goals that you set as a team together.
Fantastic, thank you. Lena?
Sorry, I thought Elliot wanted to jump in. He was keen to answer in the first place. But definitely, I think it's what Merve mentioned about making sure the targets are realistic. I mean, obviously I read a review of, or like an article in Harvard Business Review, and they like showing quite dramatically how motivation can drop when you're forced to work from home, because there's obviously a difference between you just opting for working remotely, but right now you're forced and you have no choice to go to the office, and that element kind of massively decreases motivation, and motivation is key, I think, to drive productivity of people. So it's a matter of how can you ensure to keep your team motivated, to potentially looking for means to empower them, involve them in the whole planning and like objectives process, like you would probably anyway do, but maybe enforce it even further, and make sure that you set targets with them together, targets that they feel comfortable in achieving. And it might be a situation for some businesses that actually the productivity level or just the realistic level of what can be achieved is clashing with what the expectation from the larger business is, from the management is, from potentially shareholders or private equity boards, as we all know them is. So it's important as a leader to kind of try and reconcile these both worlds, and taking a realistic stand and making it very transparent to your team that you're there to support them. As a leader, it's your job to kind of making sure as many obstacles on their way are removed. So it's your job to also then communicate and see where you can bring together the expectation of the wider business and what can be achieved. And I think having that communication stream and like making sure information is flowing correctly, and knowing and checking in with your team on, like, maybe it's not micromanaging, but maybe it's making sure every week you do a quick wrap up of what you have achieved, what's the outlook to next week, and then celebrate smaller successes. I think there's a lot of projects right now, be it for budget or operational reasons, that they're put on hold, but there's always, in every business, I think there's small successes, and especially in e-commerce, like we're like trying to tell these stories, and we have an intranet or like workplace, and we kind of tend to share these small successes with the wider team, because you don't know, like, it's not just our success if we sell whatever, we have a big order coming in, somebody ordering a big piece of furniture. It's a team effort, it's a company effort, there's operations, there's logistics. So making sure you communicate on success and keep that motivation up and running.
That's really valuable, thank you. Elliot?
Yeah, so for me, it's just, this is a great opportunity to stress test your operating model. You know, if you've got your operating model right, then it should work in tough times. So at Salt, we've always had a very definitive model based upon our 5 pillars, which are our vision, which is creating futures, i.e., making placements for our customers, our values, which are integrity, dynamic, expertise, achievement, and synergy. We have our minimum standards, which is the way in which our consultants work, our touch points with our customers, how many jobs we work, etc. Our key account management program, which is about cross-selling customers internally, making sure we're introducing all of our different service lines across creative, marketing, sales, and technology, and then also cross-selling our key customers internationally as well. And then our DNA, which is our 5th pillar, which is the training and development of all of our staff. So we've continued working to all of those 5 pillars, albeit with just every face-to-face touch point has just turned into a video touch point. So we're maintaining all of our one-to-ones, maintaining all of our scrum meetings, maintaining all of those social elements. So it's just about making sure that you are doing all of the things that you set up to do as a business, and you hold your nerve, you hold your integrity with regards to what you're doing. If your business is falling apart, then obviously it's a good key indicator that perhaps it wasn't working in the first place, perhaps it wasn't working in the good times. In the same respects, it's a good opportunity to adjust some ways in which you've been working and even become more efficient. You may see that some employees have actually become more efficient working remotely, or more spread out, or not with those face-to-face touch points every day. So it's an opportunity for us all to business process re-engineer and make sure we come out stronger.
Kate, may I add one thing? I think it's also important for leaders to be a little vulnerable at this time as well, because I know that leaders, including myself, we take everything on our shoulders and we take the whole responsibility. But actually, it's a team responsibility. Like whatever the business requires, whether you're doing well or you're not doing well at the moment, it's actually just like in relationships. It's a great test for your relationship with your team. So I feel like opening up your challenges to your team and opening up about what kind of goals you need to meet. I think you can also make them empathize with you and support you at a greater level. I think we missed that point, and I think it's an important one.
That's almost about empowerment then, really, isn't it? It's the step beyond motivation, not just how do you motivate, how do you empower? And I think that's a really valuable point.
Definitely.
Would you also agree, and this is something that I think some industries do better than others, and I know there's been a lot of kickback in China, that actually sort of hours, you can't control the hours worked, or you certainly can't monitor them to the same extent, and that perhaps measuring on deliverables, on actual sort of tangible pieces of work or results is a far better and healthier way to monitor, rather than you clocked in and turned your laptop on at 8:45 and how dare you switch it off before 6 o'clock. Would you agree?
Once, yes, definitely. I mean, in my team, and it's always how I looked at work, is like it's probably a bit German and direct to say I really don't care for how long you work, from where you work, or what you're actually doing. It's important that you achieve what we agree on you're going to be achieving. And of course, there's certain there's certain rules within a company of when they're needed, but I think, it's the time, it just emphasizes it, that people also working differently, like their working habits very different. They have also a normal life. Some, again, have maybe like family duties, others don't, others just prefer to work longer hours because they're more productive in the evenings. Other people are more early birds. So I really think it's about the results and the deliverables, and like making sure these are clear, like expectations are very clear in these times. As I said, there might be shifts in what needs to be achieved from a management perspective, such as being transparent and clear and realistic with what you expect, and then have the commitment from the employees that they will achieve that, and they're working and focusing on what matters most right now.
Brilliant, thank you. And this is a question that we received from one of the registrants. Are we going to have to be more flexible as leaders moving forwards? Because you can't unsee what's been seen now. We've seen what we can do from home and what does need to be done in the office. Elliot, do you think that'll change the landscape in terms of hiring and flexibility and working?
I think it definitely will with some roles. Speaking from a recruitment perspective, I'm a big believer in people listening and watching to learn and fully develop and hone their skills. So, you need people in an office environment together to be able to effectively do that. However, a lot of the roles that we recruit, be it software engineers, designers, marketeers, salespeople, a lot of this stuff can be done via the telephone, can be done remotely. A lot of candidates we place, say that they don't necessarily have a lot of contact with their line managers. They don't necessarily need to be in an office environment. So I think there will be a big reevaluation with a lot of roles. I think a lot of trust will derive from this situation that we're in. But as I mentioned earlier, I think it will mean that companies will need to rehire certain roles within their business because they need a new type of person to now do that role because of the economic situation that we're now in.
Brilliant. Merve?
Yeah, I think, it takes time to build a habit, but we're locked down for a long time that we are building new habits. All of us are getting used to being around our, family or child or dog or, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. We are actually tasting that. We are tasting things that we haven't tasted before. And of course, it might change expectations of candidates from some employees and employers, and I feel like they might become more demanding in terms of demanding more flexible hours or demanding to see their families more, because I think it takes time to unbreak those habits that we have formed right now. So just like everything else that is going to stay, some of the online shopping trends are going to stay. We're going to continue buying our groceries online, maybe. Same thing with that. Like some of our habits that we are creating right now at home, they will also stay. So I think we cannot just turn a blind eye on what's happening and what's changing and what your teams are requesting. But again, it will come down to the culture and the why of the company, and how this has to be dealt with will be decided according to those kind of factors. But yeah, things will change for sure.
I also think potentially, I mean, I don't want to be painting anything black, but I think we need to be careful with just trying to plan for a world afterwards, or like this, when we are all back to normal, when we're all back to reality. I hear these sentences quite often, and I guess there's a tendency, is like this old world, new world thinking or breaking habits. There's a tendency to just for some people to wait and just come back to normal and do certain things only once we know we can go back to the office. And I'm not saying that this won't be soon, or this won't be as we know it again, but there might be, it might really just disrupt our systems further, and it might be that we go back to the office in 6 weeks, and then there's another wave coming and another curve increasing, and you have a similar scenario again. So I think what Elliot said, you really need to kind of future-proof your business model and certain roles and positions and people, and see if they how they're performing in this situation, in this kind of extraordinary situation, and then see if these are the right people you want to build your company and your team and your culture in the future. And if there's a second wave, make sure that next time you get even hit a bit less or less hard.
I really don't want to think about that, Lena, but good point.
Another question for you, Lena. We've talked about the sort of whether there will be a permanent shift towards e-commerce, but how do you think that shift between brick and mortar and e-commerce offerings will create how you create customer experiences?
I think it's the most discussed question at the moment, and you hear this a lot in the business, especially in one like ours, where we are kind of split between classical wholesale and D2C e-commerce retail. I think it's shift is maybe not the right word. I think the retail world especially, but I think many industries have discussed the omni-channel model for a long time, and it's just shown how important it is to be ready. And it's a bit like with the EVP that Elliot mentioned, like companies that have invested quite a bit in the past, they're now going through this, like it's a different time, but they keep going. And other companies, they're really seeing major issues because they're not ready. Their process systems, like operations in the back end, kind of not ready to take the similar amount of transactions, clients and requests and the similar service level up now online. And I think it's a matter of making sure you understand your customer needs when you come out, like now, but also when you come out of it. And I'm convinced there will be there will be people that will appreciate even more that they can go again to physical stores once this is over, and they will potentially be a little back jump to offline retail after this, and then it will kind of balance out. That's my personal opinion. So you make sure you capture this needs and this demand on both sides, and you have a model where you can just talk to your customers and make sure you have the right touch points in place and have the same great experience and kind of a similar feel of the brand and on both sides. And then it doesn't really matter if your company is flexible, agile, and kind of can respond to both of it. It doesn't really matter where you take the sale in the end. If it's a sale, it's a sale, and it's good for you.
That's the important bit. Thank you. Merve, have you got anything to add to that?
I mean, as the expert, I guess Lena put it really well. Maybe I can ask her a question for fun. If the brick and mortar stores are diminished and we go to a different model, would you be considering your products and stuff, they're really unique products that you sell, they're not like the normal furniture that we buy from any brand. So would you be considering like AR, VR kind of experiences? How close do you think we are to that kind of building that kind of customer experiences or shopping experiences?
Yeah, I think it's very close. I think many big brands having it already. I mean, technology is still quite expensive, so it's also a matter of, are you opting in for that? And is the technology already delivering what you need, what you expected? So we have a very obviously we are like in the premium luxury market, and we're very keen to deliver a visual experience that is really strong. We're selling design and interior design, so AR and VR in our area is still has a lot of potential, definitely, because you want to see the product. That's the number one question: how is it going to look in my home, right? And you want to see it. I mean, we want to be reassured it's fitting well, and you make the right decision, especially when you're spending quite a lot of money. And we are like, from a brand perspective, we see that there's still kind of room for improvement of the technology to kind of have that seamless feel. It's a bit what we had in the beginning when we tested the tech, and you blend in with the background and everything looks a bit funny and awkward sometimes. We don't want that feel for our brand, that our product looks awkward just because of technology. So I think we're just a few steps away from that. And there's other great tools, like there's one in the market that really literally connects online and offline, because you kind of have, through video, you connect your online customers into the store, and then it's not created, it's not augmented, it's reality, it's a video, right? So you could, when you're on a product page and you're indecisive and you want to also speak to a person, then you can be connected to your retail team and they can explain the product. And because there's one thing about selling luxury, I think it's probably the same as for fashion. It's like you have that kind of human, empathic, passionate element that you can really hardly bring across just by technology. That's why I think we always will need great people that understand our product and can sell our product very well.
Brilliant, thank you. I've got a question from the audience that's just come through. And I don't know who wants to jump in and take this, but how would you deal with employees that aren't responding and are not communicating?
I can jump in. So I guess it's, people are impacted from the situation at many different levels. I had teammates who, their parents got COVID, and we had to, go through that together. We had, people who are introverts and now being locked down in the house for 45 days. Obviously, they're going through a lot of, internal pressure or psychological situation. So there's a lot of different levels where we need to support people in different ways. Some people are demotivated to work at home. Some people are more motivated to work at home. And I think if somebody is not responding, you cannot give behavioral feedback. You cannot get angry and say, why aren't you responding? I expect you to be here at this time, blah, 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 blah. This will just exacerbate the situation. So I feel like, building heart-to-heart relationships, being really open about the situation and saying, hey, you want to have an open conversation about this, and sparing the time for that. So you cannot ignore that kind of signals, because a person doesn't come to that point right away. They give you a lot of signals. And if you're turning your back to those signals, you're going to end up in a kind of a tumor situation where it's much harder to resolve or solve. So from the beginning, you should closely monitor your people, as both Lena and Elliot pointed out. You have to closely monitor them, do your daily check-ins, understand their situation, and then have a heart-to-heart conversation about it. And also, as I said before, make them empathize with you. Great leaders do that. Great leaders empathize well, they are empathetic, and they also make their team empathize with them. I think that's really key, because people are going through a very hard time. We cannot ignore that as leaders, and teams cannot ignore that leaders are a lot under pressure at the moment. So that's how I tackle it. Even if it's the weekend, I take 2 hours to talk to someone, to go through their, either mental health issue at the moment. And of course, building that level of relationship and level of trust with your team is really important too, because otherwise, why should people open up to you? Why should people come and talk about those things with their manager? I think that building that relationship also takes a lot of effort, a lot of conscious effort, and opening your heart and mind to people. So that's how I have been dealing and tackling with those kind of situations.
Brilliant, thank you. Anything to add, Lena or Elliot?
Yeah, look, a lot of the points there around, empathy and spending time with your employees, talking about how they're feeling, how they're coping with the various situations. That's absolutely business as usual as well. I spend more time talking to my direct reports about their own mental health and motivation than I do about their KPIs and the stats, because, you know, I have faith in our operating model and I have trust in my guys that that's what they're driving each and every day. I think now more than ever, we need to be, you know, even more empathetic and sensitive to certain situations. Like Merve said there, you know, someone in someone's family may have COVID. We've got some quite unique situations in our business where we had one of our ladies from New York relocate to Austin literally as lockdown was setting in. So she's been living in Austin for 6 weeks on her own with, you know, not even a kind of neighbor to, you know, wave at across the street or across the doorway or anything like that. No friends nearby, no family, no nothing. Another one of our guys as well relocated from London to New York, literally got on one of the last flights over to New York so he could get there in time. And, you know, again, he's been isolated for 6 weeks. We've got people that live on their own in our London office, in our Dubai office, that haven't seen another human being for 5 or 6 weeks. And, you know, you need to, you know, really relate to these people and listen to them and understand how they feel, not put them under too much pressure. This is where, you know, massive respect to the UK government. And for me, the way they've handled the economy with regards to the furlough scheme, because one of the biggest demotivators right now is that someone hasn't got work on. Unfortunately, we've been able to put people that haven't got work on, you know, under the furlough scheme. So, you know, they're not under pressure. They haven't got to do the job in a different way to which they normally would. If they're an account manager based person, they haven't got jobs on because their client's not recruiting, fine, you know, they can go onto the furlough scheme. So they're not under that intense pressure every day to go out there and find new business. So yeah, it's just, you know, constantly speaking to your people, understanding your people, you know, making sure that, you know, you're treating them with the respect and the distance that they need.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, but unless anyone's got any more questions, sorry, we had an issue with the link earlier. If anyone does want to squeeze in any last minute questions there, they can do so on that new link. So that's the app.sly.do link that's in the chat. And if we don't have any more questions from the audience, I'm going to ask one more to the panel. What's the biggest success that you've seen or experienced in terms of people management during the COVID-19 lockdown?
I can jump in, guys, while you guys are thinking. So the biggest success, I think, we have, the team has been great in, we call our team marketing team at Insider. And it's because, I mean, we were a marketing team before, probably because of our startup nature. And we have a manifesto, we have a clean why that we wrote together at the marketing retreat. So there is a big why that people connect to. And if you don't connect to that, that's when you see people getting demotivated or you know, frustrated. But people who connect with that really are in this together. And it's a fight. And we have to be more you know, productive than ever. We have too much online activity going on. If you're in a marketing team, all the events are cut off, so we're all, you know, dealing with different challenges, building different muscles. So I think the biggest success has been the team coming together, really, like you know, fighting with this thing together at every level. From a psychological perspective, like Kate is giving us Zumba classes every week, and you know, people are teaching us how to do no-bake cheesecake, etc. So like it's really cool to brought the team together. And I think as marketers, like most marketers are storytellers, and I think we have to create good stories and turn the negative into positive in this time. And I think that's something my team has been very successful in adopting and really like running towards the common goal together and embracing this as not normal times. And rather than, you know, changing it into something negative, we're doing a lot of focus groups and trying to solve the problems together, doing a lot of confrontation, setting really aggressive goals and running to those goals together. So that's one of the biggest successes we had. And one last thing that really inspired me the other day, you know, you guys know Mandela, and he was in prison for like 27 years. And I read these great leaders' stories to get inspired time to time. and their drive and their persistence and their mindset is what actually made them great leaders. So in times of challenge, I get a unique sense of motivation from it. Being able to struggle, actually that's where greatness comes from. It comes from the struggle, and the famous quote, always if you're weak. So we don't have a luxury to be weak at this point as leaders, and we have to be constant positives, and we need to create a good story that we will all look back and be proud of as a team. And I think that would be the biggest success that comes out of this period.
Thank you, Merve. Lena, what would you say the biggest success that you've seen or experienced in terms of people management?
It's a bit similar direction. I'd say like my team has been very positive throughout these like, what is it now, 6 weeks? I stopped counting. So it's basically, in the beginning it was a bit easy. I think it was really sunny in London, so I guess people reacting to weather well, they had an easier task. But just throughout, I see like everybody really pushing hard, just doing their like daily effort, join these morning sessions, have a smile on their face, sometimes as easy as that, and just come up with something. Everybody, I think all of us have had little ideas, be it that they suggested a Friday afternoon new kind of quiz model, or that they I don't know, as I mentioned, that they see small successes, they start talking about, they put it also to the wider business. They've been really like kind of positive change makers for the wider business, because other than in other units maybe it's a bit more quiet. For us, obviously there's still loads to do. Online is acting as normal or even better, and it's like we're going the extra mile for our customers, and like we're sharing it, and it's kind of being these, what Merve said, being these positive storytellers and being helpful and really quick to respond. Like my team has always been like this, but I think now it's even more visible, like that you get the help and get the quick help, and I'm really proud of them actually.
That's brilliant. I'm sure they're really grateful for that. Elliot, any final positives to round off on?
Yeah, so I think we've spoken a lot about the positive things that we can do and that we've had to do during this process. But I think the thing I've been most impressed with from a Salt perspective is how we've actually had to deliver the bad news as well. So in times like this, you obviously have to ask people to take pay cuts, work reduced hours. You have to put them on furlough. You have to put their roles up for redundancy. And I've been really impressed the way that our leaders have stepped up and have never had to deliver this type of news before. You know, we've got some very young leaders within Salt, early 30s, mid 30s, and they're having to stand up and, for the first time in their, 5-6 year career as a leader, make some really tough calls and turn around to people that have been really, great employees of Salt and really loyal. And like I say, I ask them to take pay cuts in tough times like this, where they may have had partners that have been made redundant, or, similarly asked to work reduced hours and take pay cuts. So yeah, I think, there's a big focus on leaders that have had to do these things, and I think it's going to really develop their careers. And I'm sure there's many other leaders across many other companies that have had to do similar things. But we must always remember, even when we're having those tough conversations, that, we are doing these things for the greater good. We are doing these things to save as many jobs as possible and to maintain the company in a stronger economic position so that it does come out the other side. And whereas you may have to make 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 job cuts here and there and take some pay cuts here and there, in the long run, that's maybe going to save 50, 100, 200 jobs.
Thank you. It's a very good point. Anyone can deliver good news, but delivering bad news with grace and respect is a special talent indeed. Thank you very much. I don't think we've got any more questions come through, so I think we'll sign off. Thank you everyone for listening. We hope you found that interesting. If you do have any follow-up questions for any of our panelists, I'll send you a follow-up email with their contact details in case you have any further questions or things you'd like to discuss. Thanks guys. Thank you to our panel.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Thanks guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks. Goodbye.